Thank you. So I'm pretty sure everybody on the call knows me at this point. Becca Hopkins, Neighborhood Services Manager. Also have a few other staff members on the call. We have Jeremy Coburn, who's our project assistant for the Division Economic and Neighborhood Services. We have Noel Hizanik Murphy, our project coordinator for the division, Meg Thompson, director for the division, and Mika Gadsden, who, okay, your title is Special Advisor for Community Initiatives.
Yes.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you for joining us. And Mika has consulted a bit on this project, which has been really helpful. We are recording, and so the purpose of this webinar is to introduce a new resource that our office has developed for neighborhood presidents. And it is a toolkit for building a block captain program in your neighborhood. And we're also going to talk through like what a block captain is and what a program might look like. So just a quick housekeeping. I'm not really worried about this group because I know you guys are pretty together. But in general, stay muted. If you have a question, since there's so few people, it's okay if you jump in, but if you don't want to interrupt, then you're also welcome to put it in the chat. And also, when we get to the end, I'll do another kind of Q&A. Since there are so few people here, I actually, Stephanie, Ann, and Catherine, would you one at a time unmute and introduce yourself and say what neighborhood you're from? I'll have Stephanie go first.
Hi, Stephanie Wilson Gentile, French Quarter Neighborhood Association.
Thank you. Ann?
Hi, I'm Ann Degnan, and I'm from the Gatlinburg Neighborhood Association.
Awesome, thank you. And Catherine? Catherine might have stepped away, but I'm pretty sure she's from North Central. And she, oh, there you are.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm from North Central.
Thank you for joining us. Appreciate all of y'all coming. So Noel or Jay, would you mind dropping the toolkit in the chat as we get started? Our agenda today is we're gonna just review how the neighborhood council program works, although I'm pretty sure that all of y'all are familiar with it already. We are going to talk about what a block captain is, how an association can adopt the block captain program, different roles that the block captain can fill depending on what your association is sort of looking for. And then I'm going to go through the toolkit and then I'll take questions. But again, since there's not a lot of people here, it's okay if you interrupt me and just kind of chime in. That's all right. So a neighborhood council, or the neighborhood council, is a program that the city has had since 1977, started under Mayor Riley. He encouraged city council to pass a resolution supporting the creation of the neighborhood council and a program that at the time was called the Citizen Participation Plan. And the council is made up of independent neighborhood associations that the city has recognized as being organized. I don't love the name neighborhood council because it sounds different than what it is, which is it's a group of groups. It's a group of neighborhood associations. And these neighborhood associations are one that at some point in the past 50 years have applied for this standing, and they've come to the city and said, okay, we have bylaws, we have officers, we have regular meetings, etc. We have more than 120 recognized neighborhood associations. Currently, not all of those are active. There are varying degrees of activeness and engagement. We would love to get more of them active again. And the neighborhood council is overseen by the neighborhood commission, which is a group of appointees. Each city council member and the mayor appoint a member of the neighborhood commission. So they go over applications for new neighborhood associations that want to join the council. Okay, so when I was doing research about block captains, because this is something that I've wanted to do for a while, most of the ones that I found across the country were actually like neighborhood watch programs. This is not really what I'm looking to do with this program. I'm kind of hoping that this program will be really more a part of the communication chain, and somebody who like lives on a block, who neighbors can kind of look to as someone who will help them solve problems, who will help them communicate with the neighborhood association or the city, and who will take ownership of like small safety issues or work orders like potholes and things like that. And I'm going to talk about the specific roles here in more depth later. And this is just to emphasize how I kind of picture the block captains would operate within the chain of communication. So for example, when I send out like a street blocking notification to the neighborhood associations, if a neighborhood association has a block captain, the president can just send that notification to the specific block that, you know, where it's relevant, instead of having to send it out to the whole neighborhood association. Okay. I think this will be especially useful in really big or dense neighborhood associations. So if your association decides to adopt a program like this, I think that the first step would be stepping back with your board and really thinking about what your neighborhood association needs, and what your goals are as an association. So like, for example, are you trying to get more residents involved in the neighborhood association? Are you having issues reaching residents, like communication wise, that kind of things? And how, like, do you have people in mind who would be good candidates for this role? So what you would want to do is present an overview of what you have in mind. And I'm happy to help you like think about that, talk through that, anything like that. And then propose it to the neighborhood association and then adopt it with a vote. Hopefully you adopt it. Who should be a block captain? So kind of a block captain is almost like a president, like a neighborhood association president for just the block. And when I think about my block, for example, there's one person named Donna, and Donna always knows when garbage collection is. And even though I should always know when garbage collection is, I often forget. And so I look to see whether Donna's can is out. So Donna is someone who really takes ownership of the block. She's the type of person who would be out clearing the drain if it got clogged. She's the type of person who, like, people tell her what's going on with their lives. And she's always willing to do a little digging to solve problems. So she kind of is the unofficial president on the block. Now, your neighborhood association might be big enough and engaged enough that you actually want to hold elections for the block captains, but it might also be the case where you take volunteers, and those people are just appointed by the board. So that's something that your neighborhood association would want to decide while you are having the vote when the project is or program is proposed. So going back to the roles that we talked about, I think the most important piece here is being a communicator, disseminating information from the neighborhood association to the individual residents and really making sure that people are getting it. So I say act as a liaison. Also collecting resident contact information, that becomes especially important in emergency preparedness, and I'll get into that a little bit more later. And keeping new neighbors informed, as well as welcoming them to the neighborhood. This is something that I've thought a lot about since the pandemic, is how important community building is when it, like, in terms of getting people out of their homes to actually talk to each other. I think that is invaluable to making a neighborhood resilient. And there's a anecdote that our emergency management specialist Daniel likes to cite about how neighborhoods that had stronger bonds before the Fukushima disaster in Japan, those neighborhoods did better than ones that didn't, even controlling for income. So like community building has a really direct impact on resiliency. And we know, we have lots of hurricanes. That's something that like we really have to work on intentionally, is building community. And ways that you can do that are organizing events, having a newsletter for your neighborhood association, and just being intentional about welcoming new neighbors. I have a template in the toolkit that I'll show y'all at the end of this too. And one note about events is you should always make sure to have a permit, or check to make sure that you need if you need a permit, that you have one, whether that's a street blocking permit or a special events permit. Another role that they can fill is promoting safety and livability. So this can include educating residents about crime prevention techniques and any safety measure. For the most part, that's reminding people to lock their cars. You want to take ownership of any issues. So for example, you would be the person who would maybe download the City of Charleston app and like take pictures of potholes and put work orders in, keeping litter out of the storm drains, maybe setting up an adopt a block or an adopt a drain program, and also getting familiar with how to put work orders in, working with both the neighborhood association and the city. And talked a little bit about emergency preparedness already, but we talked about maintaining contact information. This is when it becomes really important, so that you can actually check on the people on your block and make sure that they're okay, especially vulnerable neighbors. When it's safe, the block captain might clear brush or limbs from the road. And then also calling in any work orders. Okay, so the toolkit pretty much has what we just talked about, but just in more detail. So before I show it to y'all, do y'all have any questions? I'm going to assume from silence that you don't. Okay. And I'm going to share the toolkit now. Again, feel free to stop me with any questions. So this is pretty much what we just talked about. I'm not going to go into too much detail because of that. However, I'm going to show you and kind of emphasize the templates at the end of the toolkit. Oh, we also have numbers and links to know. Here's a template for keeping track of the folks on your block. Here's a welcome letter welcoming new neighbors to the block. And it pretty much just goes through like, here's the recycling and garbage pickup. Neighborhood association meetings are on this date and time. The citizen services number, and then local favorites. You might also consider including this actual links to know in whatever packet you would give to new residents. And then lastly, we have a phone tree template. Phone trees are maybe not as important as they used to be now that people have email and text and stuff, but especially in neighborhoods where people are less comfortable with technology, I think they're still pretty important. And a lot of the neighborhood associations downtown are like, have a lot of seniors in them. And so I think that that is still worth exploring for folks who are not as comfortable with technology. So do y'all have any questions about the toolkit? Stephanie, Catherine, or Anne?
Hey, it's Stephanie.
Hey.
Hey. Quick question.
Yes.
I love this idea, by the way. But what problem are we trying to solve here? How have you come up with a block captain program to address what issues do you see in our neighborhood associations?
That's a good question, and maybe I didn't go into the why as much as I should have. I think that some neighborhoods really struggle to engage people kind of on a, I hate the word granular, but like on a block by block. I think, for example, like one of my most successful and smoothest running neighborhood associations goes through and actually like with a welcome packet already and greets people as they like when they're actually moving in, so that those people are automatically kind of onboarded almost. And then also I guess I worry a lot about like just create like what I hope from this is, number one, like less will be put on the actual neighborhood presidents because they can kind of delegate some of the responsibilities to the actual block captains. And then I hope that this will help people like develop relationships with each other on like a more granular, on a more like hyper local basis. Does that answer your question?
It does. Thank you. I just have one more question. How do you define a block?
I think
Or-
that that kind of will, I think that that would be left up to the neighborhood associations because
Yeah.
I mean, it could be a literal block or it could be like, okay, I'm going to put this person in charge of, you know, this stretch because this is the only person who will probably take ownership there. Or maybe like a block only has 2 houses on it. So like it would be silly to have, so I would leave that up to the association.
Yeah, and Meg has an excellent point. For condos, a block could be a floor. Absolutely.
That's a good
Thank
point.
you. Thank you, Becca.
Catherine or Anne, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I don't have any questions. I think I mean, it sounds like a great idea. You know, anything, I think part of the challenge is communication. So this is a way of making the communication more relevant, you know, because I think people get so many emails, and if it doesn't pertain directly to their life or what, you know, what the problems are, then they're not going to engage. So I don't know if it's as relevant in a condominium situation, but I could definitely see, you know, in other neighborhoods how, you know, what literally what's happening on your block is the part that's impacting you. So
Yeah. That's a good point. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, Becca, I also see that if we can get some volunteers to be block captains, that might free up some of the time that neighborhood association presidents are using to do things. And I don't mind doing it, but it would be great if I just had some first lieutenants to talk to about, or keep an eye on, or be aware of. And you know, submitting requests is a big deal, and just following up with stuff, not asking them to do too much. So I think this is a great idea. Thank
Well,
you.
thank you. Yeah, I know that in Hampton Park Terrace, they already have people who like they have block captains and they give out the newsletter to just their block. So like little things like that. And I also agree that like, you know, following up with like work orders and stuff can just be so time consuming that I'm hoping that this would kind of spread the load a little bit. Any other questions? Well, okay. Well, we're gonna put this recording on our office website or division website and YouTube. So feel free to share it with your residents. And I'm also happy to come talk to any neighborhood association that's interested in adopting something like this. I would be really pumped about that.
Is it I'm sorry, excuse me, Becca. Is it all possible to put the PDFs that Jeremy just put out on chat? Could you just send them to us in an email? I'm having some difficulty with my technology, and
Yeah,
I can't get at the PDF.
I will do that. We can do
Great,
that right after this. I think I have all of y'all's email already so that it can auto-populate, and I can just shoot that out real quick. Okay, well, as always, I'm available with any questions. Did you have another one, Stephanie?
No, I guess some of us will see you tomorrow.
Yes, ma'am.
Tomorrow morning, bright and early.
Bright and early, there will be coffee.
Good, thanks. Thank you, Becca.
All right, thanks, guys. I really appreciate it.
Thanks. Thank you.
No, you
Thank
can
you.
stop.